everyone, this is a new episode of Carolyn Talks, the podcast YouTube channel where I, your host Carolyn Hayes, film critic and journalist, talk to members of the film industry about their work and what inspires them. And today I'm joined by Aki Takabatake to talk about her company MOMO Films, which is a boutique film distribution company. And we're going to talk about her company and her work in the industry. And we're doing this because actually I received a press release from Aki promoting her films that will be showing at the Toronto Japanese Film Festival, which is being held by the Japanese Canadian Cultural Center. And two of the films that will be screening there are The Zen Diary, which is a film about food. And I love films about food. I love food. I love watching people cook food, and I love learning about different cultures and different people through food. And the second film is an animated film called Ramayama, which is it was a joint production between a Japanese director and an Indian filmmaker, and it won some awards because I was reading up on it, and it won some awards. It's from 1992, but it was re-released, I believe, in 2020, where it got put into some film festivals.
It's a re-release. So it was originally released when the film was made, and then acquired by an American company, and they did the distribution of like kind of shorter version, but the rights expired. And also the Japanese producer did a 4K remaster, I think around 2020. And so they started to do re-release in Japan, and then I acquired the rights for the 4K version here.
Okay, and we're definitely going to talk about the process of acquiring films for distribution. That's something I do want to learn more about, so I'm very excited to talk to you about that. But as usual, before we begin my full interviews, I'd like to have my guests say a bit about themselves. So Aki, tell us a bit about yourself. What got you involved in film distribution and your interest in working within that aspect of the film industry?
Yeah, so my name is Aki Takabatake, and I'm the founder of MOMO Films Inc. I graduated from Japanese high school, but I wanted to study in Canada. So I went to Vancouver and eventually got into UBC, where I took film studies. But also I was volunteering at the Cinematheque in Vancouver. So I was watching a lot of films, like maybe 2 films every night.
Yes, I can't even say anything because that's me and dramas. I watch multiple episodes a night.
Yeah, so after graduating from UBC, I went back to Japan, and I found a job at a film distribution company, and I was mainly doing acquisition for the company. But the company also had 2 or 3 film theaters. So I also learned about theatrical distribution, and the company also released DVD and Blu-rays and eventually TV and stuff. So I learned the whole process of acquiring a film to doing the distribution, theatrical to DVD to TV broadcaster. I also sold rights of films a couple times in the past, so I know both sides of acquisition and the sales. So in 2009, me and my husband decided to move to Toronto. So we moved to Toronto, and I worked for the Toronto International Film Festival about 4 or 5 years in the programming department. I was working for especially Asian film department. So I got to see a lot of Asian films, including Japanese films, and I met a lot of directors. And then also I talked to Japanese Canadian Cultural Center and pitched the idea of starting a Japanese film festival. Right. And they took my idea. So the director of JCCC, who is Mr. James Heron, decided to start the film festival, the Toronto Japanese Film Festival. So I was involved from the beginning of the film festival. We programmed the films, and we watched a lot of films every year. And I was also involved in inviting directors and talking to the film sales agent, getting materials, those kind of logistics stuff. and this is like our 12th year. It's happening right now in June. But so because I watch a lot of films through like my work, I come across with like really, really good films that I think it's kind of perfect for Canadian audience.
Yeah.
And I had this idea of like, I wanna start a distribution company. But then like, I had kids, and also like the pandemic happened, everything was like shut down. And I was like, I can't really do it now. But then like after the pandemic, I saw this like amazing film called My Small Land. And it was like really early on, like it was selected for Berlin last year. And the sales agent in Japan showed me the link about the same time for me to consider, and then I was like, this is an amazing movie. So I want to like distribute this movie in Canada, and they're really kind enough to let me handle the film, even though it's like I'm a startup as a distributor in Canada. Yeah.
That's amazing. So like so many things you said I want to get into, but first thing first, I actually moved to Canada in 2009 too, into Toronto in 2009. When did you move? What month?
September.
You were better than me. I moved here in November in winter. Don't ever do that. Don't. That was a mistake.
Yeah, it's cold and it was depressing.
Very much so. We moved here from the Caribbean in 2009 in November. That was a bad idea. It was like a slap. It was literally like a slap in the face. We stepped out the airport and it was like, what? So I was like, what is this? I've never been colder in my life, but I'm like, we have that in common. But you mentioned that you left Japan as a student and you came to Canada to study. Why did you leave Japan to study in Canada? Is it that there weren't any programs that you wanted to do at the schools in Japan, and then you decided to do Canada instead?
Yeah, so Japanese university system is quite different from Canadian system. So like at the end of the last year in high school, you basically have to decide which university you want to go and which course you want to take, and you have only one chance of doing exam, and if you fail, you will not be able to get into the university. So I thought that like it's very fixed, and once you get on the rail, you kind of have to go on the rail. But like I was only like 17, 18. I didn't really know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. And I knew that I wanted to learn English, but also like I thought like outside of Japan, like US or Canada or whatever other countries, universities are more open. Like at least like the first few years, you don't really have to decide what you want to major in.
Yeah, the courses are more flexible. You can drop a course and restart if you wanted to. Yeah,
exactly. So I like the flexibility, and because I didn't know what I wanted to study. And I also wanted to like study English. I was like, okay, I want to go to university outside of Japan. So I have a lot of choices between like States, Canada, or like Australia, New Zealand, whatever. But I decided to go to Vancouver.
Yeah, and I think that's great because the system in the Caribbean is kind of similar to what you're describing with Japan, where you do your CXCs, which is we call our school living exams. And your grades kind of determine if you're going to do community college, because we have one community college, or if you're going to do, or if people want to do like a skill or a tradescraft, you're going to study for that at like a polytechnic. But once you get into university, once you start, it's very hard to switch midstream. So most people generally have to know exactly what they're going to do when you're going to university. It can be kind of hard to switch courses. So the system is kind of similar. And since in Barbados we only have one university, we have the Cape Hill University campus, but there's also the sister campus in Jamaica, and they have like slightly different courses there. So if you can't do your course in Barbados, you go to Japan, to Jamaica. But the funny thing is like there's also very limited courses that you can do as well. So the system is kind of the same. So a lot of people have to do like student exchange programs with like either Canada, the US, or England, or even sometimes in Asia. So I think like I think that's one of the things where like I think a lot of universities, not just in like Canada or Japan or even internationally, I think it's just internationally, like students, because you're going into university at such a young age, 17, 18, you're not an adult fully, you're still learning.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like you go into college, you realize, oh wait, college is not what I expected it to be. University is not what I expected it to be. The films and the shows, like, it's way harder than they make it seem, you know. It's a lot of work and it kind of messes with you. So like you should be able to me, I've always believed you should be able to have like open-ended courses, you know. You have this like life skills courses, and you say, okay, this is how I'm gonna find my passion, you know. And choosing to do film, like, that's something. Like when people look at film, they say, oh, they go to school for like filmmaking, you know. They were like, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be a writer, I want to be a director, a cinematographer, whatever. But a lot of people don't necessarily go to school to be like, to do distribution, you know, to do the management side of the film industry. And like I was in Korea recently, I went there to cover like 2 of their film festivals, and there they have the very first program in Asia, and I think internationally too, where it's specifically to teach filmmakers and students who aren't filmmakers the administrative side of filmmaking. So it's teaching them about production and about distribution and the sales side and the business side of filmmaking. And it's the Asian Film School. The program is AFIS, AFIS. So it's the Asian Film School program. Yeah. And I thought it was brilliant because like most people, when I talk to them, like producers or distributors, they don't have any technical or educational background for it, you know. They kind of just like fall into it, and they have to learn as they go along, because there's no courses to teach you how to be a film distributor, how to be a film producer, you know. So like so for you, like when you were deciding to do film distribution, you learned that as an adult, like the process that
exactly. Like I learned.
So what was it like for you?
So when I started to work for this Japanese film distribution company, I didn't really know anything about distribution or rights or whatever, right? But luckily, like, you know, they started sending me to film markets pretty much right away. So like I went to like Cannes and MIP TV, all those like film festivals and TV markets. And I had meetings with like sales agents. Our company was like acquiring contents like constantly, so I learned the process of like negotiation, and then also like how to read contract, like English contracts. And then also like the company owned movie theaters, so I got to learn like how to like distribute the ones that we acquired. So I was kind of lucky because I got to learn everything. And the company was kind of like a small to medium-sized company. Maybe like when I started, maybe like about 20-30 people working, and it grew to maybe like about 100 people. But because it was kind of small, one person has to do like multiple tasks. So I was a buyer, but like also kind of had to help the promotion sometimes, the distribution sometimes, TV sales sometimes. So by doing like different kinds of film distribution aspects, like I learned a lot of things.
Now you mentioned the buying, so that's something I want to talk about, because I've only been doing film criticism full-time since 2018, and there's still so much about the film industry that I want to learn. So for me, it's not only about talking about the film itself and talking about the arts, like the cinematography and editing and music, and like that's all of that very much interests me. But for one of my things is, especially now that I'm kind of getting older, I kind of want to learn as much about the industry as I can, and one of that is about like the distribution and the marketing side of it. And you mentioned buying, so like I've only seen it when I've been at TIFF, but like at TIFF there's the market hall. So in the market hall, that's where you have like the distributors like yourself and the agents, like they are like basically there to promote the films to I guess you can say like networks and studios and the theaters about getting these films marketed like internationally, in particular because TIFF is an international film festival. So talk about the process of buying. So how does that actually work? Because like, you know, like it's not the same as going into a supermarket or even like a video store and say, okay, like we see this film, I want to buy it and I want to distribute it. Talk about the process of buying itself.
Okay, so the film has several different rights. So like there's distribution, like a theatrical rights, there's TV rights, you know, the Blu-ray, the DVD rights, it's called videogram rights. Nowadays there's like VOD rights, internet rights, whatever. And usually like for a film company, you buy all rights so that you can have like the every rights so and to execute in your own country. And because I was working for a Japanese company, usually the territory that we acquire is just for Japan.
Right.
And then you get like you have some years, right? Like 5 to 10 years. And then like film can be sold on the script basis. So even though it's before being made, you have a script and like famous director and then actors attached. Some buyers are interested and then they read the script and then may pay. Like it's called pre-buy.
Right.
But a lot of buyers, you know, like want to watch the completed films. So that's when like they go to market or film festivals because they premiere at those festivals or markets. So they go and then like they watch the film. Sometimes they have like industry screenings only for like buyers and stuff. So they attend those screenings. They watch the movie and they think, oh, this is amazing. It's gonna work in Japan. They kind of like rush to the sales agent's booth.
Yeah.
And, like make a call.
I've seen the Russians, like as soon as the screening goes, it's like all a bunch of people in the market. I'm like, where were you like 5 minutes ago? Yeah.
And then they're like, yeah, like, and then start the negotiation, right? Because they pretty like show interest beforehand, but they're like, you know, after watching, like for sure I want. And sometimes get into like bidding war, right? Like, oh, I'll pay this much, and then the other company pays this much, and like, okay, I'll pay this much more. Yeah, so that's kind of how the acquisition works.
And for especially when you're okay, like so for say using Japan as an example, because Japan is an island, it's not like a continent, and I think that kind of actually plays into it because you usually for like smaller countries, like the cultural foundations or the government aid in providing financial aid to like for instance if the Japanese Cultural Center was set in Japan, like they would get aid from the Japanese Cultural Foundation. It kind of works the same in Barbados because in Barbados we have the Barbados Cultural Foundation, so they provide sponsorship, you know, for like people who want to like do like filmmaking or different things like that. So for like instance, if you have like a company like yours because it's an independent company, and if you were for instance, oh, you know what, let me apply to Canada because Canada you have some cultural foundations that do provide like aid. There's
like telefilms,
CFC, okay, right. So like do you like for you because you're an independent company, do you get like sponsorship to help with like getting distribution rights? Like you can say, okay, I have the backing of Telefilm Canada to help me distribute this film. Does that happen?
Like as MOMO Films?
Yes.
So I'm actually, you know, trying to do more research about that because what I know is Canadian distributor, if they distribute Canadian films, they can get some kind of like grant or like funding from either Telefilm or like CFC or whatever, like you apply. But I focus on Japanese films, so I don't think I can apply for that because it's like their focus is Canadian films, which is totally understandable. And then Japan also has government organizations such as like Uni Japan, and then like Japan foundations and stuff. But I think their focus is for Japanese companies that have their offices in Japan, and then my company is Canadian company, so it doesn't really, you know.
What about films? Like if you have a film, like okay, so we mentioned Ramayama is like a Japanese-Indian collaboration. So what if it's a film that's like a Japanese-Canadian collaboration?
Yeah. So in that case, I think I should be able to apply to like a Telefilm some kind of like funding.
Right.
But because I haven't really done that before, I don't know how. And I'm in the process of like, you know, like learning about that. I had like a meeting with telefilm person. What I know is like as a distributor to apply for like any kind of funding, you have to be like kind of like approved by telefilm as like a legit distributor. And when I was reading all the documents, it says like have to have minimum 2 years of so like, you know, I've been in the industry for a long time, but like I started the company just last year, so I may have to wait another year to apply. I'll see how it goes, because they may be flexible, but I don't know.
Okay, so you started the company, I just said, just a year ago, and you started it when the film industry was kind of like in flux, because like in 2020 the pandemic began, and the film industry was kind of on pause for a very long time. And even like because like you had the like film festivals like TIFF and South by Southwest, like those were paused for the first year in 2020, so they didn't happen. So that I know that would have affected distribution as well, because like, you can't have the marketing. So with that happening, and then like things starting to pick up again in 2021, and then in 2022 it was almost like people are like quote unquote back to normal, but you know it's still not back to normal, because there's films that like 2-3 years they've lost 2-3 years of potential like distribution and marketing and getting it all exposed, because a lot of films there are a lot of films that are being released now that were made during the pandemic, you know? Like, especially like a lot of
backlog of like a lot of films,
a lot of them are independent films in particular were made during the pandemic. So like when you started the company, what was it that made you decide, okay, this is when I'm going to start it? And then what were the challenges you had beginning it, considering like basically like we lost like almost 1.5 years, 2 years of the film industry?
So like I started the film company kind of right after the pandemic, so I don't think I was affected much by the pandemic. But it's just like by myself, and I started, you know, like all alone without having knowledge about like how to start a company. So that was a
just pull up my laptop and begin.
challenge, right? I had to do all the researches. You had to like open a bank account, like, you know, just like a business account. Every single step was like new, and kind of had to learn from the scratch. I just had the knowledge of like, you know, how to acquire films, how to distribute films, but I didn't know any theaters in Canada. So, and I made a list of all the theaters, because like besides Cineplex and Landmarks, you know, they probably like are more than 50% of like Canadian theaters, I would say. And then there are not too many like, you know, independent cinemas which would be interested in like Japanese language films. So like, you know, places like TIFF or like Cinematheque or VF Center. I made a list, and then, you know, I found like contact info and started to like send emails to them saying, hey, I have this amazing film called My Small Land, which was like awarded at Berlin last year. Like it was like this year. And then some people replied saying, hey, that looks interesting. And then I showed them the link, and they wanted to show the film. So it's just like all these steps take some time, and I had to learn from the scratch. So I would say that was kind of a challenge.
Okay, right. So for you, like for this film, like My Small Land, they were literally the production company was like, literally, we will let you distribute this film, and that worked because of digital links. Like, I mean, they sent you a digital link and said you can send this to the cinemas that you're interested in having this film show.
I think everything became digital, made me easier to just do the distribution by myself, because as you said, I can show the film with a digital link to theaters. Also, like, you know, you can send DCP by digital as well, like by email.
DCP is?
This is like a digital cinema package. It's like a screening material. Like you can have it in a physical format, like in a hard disk, but because it's digital, you can basically send the link by email. It's a really heavy data, but like, if you have digitally, you basically don't have to like deal with any physical material, so you don't have to like think about shipping. And then also like nowadays, people don't really need like paper flyers or like paper posters. So it made my life a lot easier, because all I had to do is like, get a designer and then make them design like a website and also like the film poster, but like just digitally. So I don't have to get it done like printing. I don't have to deal with all the shipping. So like I think this like digital world, everything is kind of digitalized, made it really easier compared to before, like when we had to deal with like print.
Now, see, this is for anyone who may be working with a production company who will say to me, a film critic, "Oh, we don't have digital links because you can't screen it. You can only watch it in person at the screening." Not true. Not true. Because that happens with me a lot, especially with a lot of other Black film critics. Like, because we can't attend. The funny thing is, okay, so in 2020, because TIFF, South by Southwest, Fantasia Fest, all of these film festivals weren't happening in person, we had, all of a sudden, we could get access to digital links. The screeners were available. 2021 happened, things started to go back to normal, and there all of a sudden film festivals, and not film festivals, the production companies and the marketers were like, "Oh, we only have like a limited number of screening links," so like everyone wasn't able to see the films. Then like this year, like I covered South by Southwest, like A24 and some other companies were saying, "Oh, we don't have any digital links. You can only watch it in person." And I'm like, really? Seriously, if you were still in lockdown, you would have found a way to make sure that everyone had those links. So when you're saying like you're able to function as a distributor, but because of digital links, and you're not the only one, because all distributors will be doing the same thing. They'll be promoting their films to the cinemas and to the companies and saying, "Oh, I'm going to send you this package because it's more convenient." So like here you say that it's a validation. This is validation for me personally. I can see
but I can see the point of a production company, because production companies, their film is probably brand new. It could be before it comes out to the theaters. So they're really worried about like their film being pirated, and a digital link has such a like potential to be pirated easily, like Vimeo link and whatever, right? So I understand as a producer or production company, if the film hasn't even like premiered anywhere, they don't wanna share the link. That can happen. Yeah. But I'm a distributor, so by the time I wanna show my small one to like Canadian theaters, it's already like screened in Japan. It's like it would premiere in Berlin and then other film festivals. So like the Japanese sales agent and producers are not as worried about us like the brand new films.
Yeah. But I'm also just like, accessibility is key for film critics to do their jobs. So like now we're talking. I want to talk a bit more like about the Toronto Japanese Film Festival, which is like which is how we are connected. So I think I didn't even know that you were responsible for starting the film festival. I think that's amazing that you were able to start an entire film festival, which has, I think, been doing extremely well. So like I became aware of it in 2018 because I was attending the Toronto Real Asian Film Festival and One Cut of the Dead showed there. And the screening was supposed to happen at the JCC Center. And I wasn't able to make it because it was raining and I got lost. I had no idea where I was going. By the time I found my way, they were like, "Oh, by the way, it's another day." I was like, "What?" I came on the wrong. But I did eventually get to see One Cut of the Dead, and I wasn't able to attend because like 2019 I had a lot of stuff going on. But then pandemic. So I was able to attend this year, and like the first film I saw was Anime Supremacy, which is amazing. That film had me laughing. So I want you to talk a bit now about the films that you'll be showing there. So like we mentioned at the beginning, the Zen Diary and the Fish Story. I keep wanting to say Fishtail, but it's not
called the Fishtail.
Is the Fishtail? I keep doubting myself. I keep doubting myself. I'm like,
yeah, it's the Fishtail.
The Fishtail. Okay, so I was right. I was doubting myself. But so talk about these two films and how you became involved with them? Like, how did the process? So for you now, how did for showing films at film festivals? How did you acquire these films for distribution? Did you reach out to the studios, or did they reach out to you and say we'd like you to show this film at the film festival?
So because the Toronto Japanese Film Festival, it's our 12th year, I would say all the Japanese film companies know about the festival. So it's easier for us to reach out and ask for like their lineup and then ask for the screeners. So that's how like, you know, me and James work together. Like we get the screeners that way, like by reaching out to all the Japanese film companies and get the screeners and watch them, and then, you know, whatever like amazing come out, we discuss and then decide to put it on the festival lineup.
So so it's you and James who decide this is what we want to show for the festivals. So how does your part in it come in as a distributor, like being the one to distribute, like for in particular these two films? Like, how does that work as well? Do you tell the studios, okay, well, we're going to show your film at the festival, and you'll be like, okay, I'd also like to work as a distributor as well?
Yeah, so that's when it kind of gets tricky because like before I started the film company, I was just like, you know, kind of like working for the festival. But now because I started my own company, it's kind of like a conflict of interest in a way. So I'm more like just like helping the festival rather than like, you know, like being a programmer.
Right.
And for example, I don't handle the festival. The festival, the director is coming, but like it's not MOMO Films title. But MOMO Films have acquired the Zen Diary and Ramayana. And of course, like when I acquired the film, I think about the Toronto Japanese Film Festival because that's, you know, I'm really close to the festival. I really like the festival. And also like they focus on Japanese films. It's kind of like a perfect match. And then like, it would be really great like if the festival picks up MOMO Films titles, because then like, you know, it has more exposure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so once a festival is wrapped, I've always wondered what happens after now. So what was the next step for you after like Zen Diaries and Ramayana shows at the festival? What like so showing it at the festival is going to be different than showing it after a festival, because you already have an established audience with a film festival. Like you have people who are there. So what's the process of gaining an audience after?
Yeah, it's hard. I basically had to like contact all the film theaters and then ask, you know, if they want to show the films, and because I worked with like some theaters with my small land, for example, like Biff Center or a Cinematheque, I reach out to them and, you know, like, hey, do you want to show these films? I have these films. Luckily for the Zen Diary, Biff Center was interested, so they're gonna show it in September. And then also like I met with a theater owner of Fox Theater, but he also owns Bytown Cinema in Ottawa. He lives actually fairly close to here, so we had a coffee and then also like pitched my films, and then he liked like my small land and the Zen Diary, so he's gonna like show those two films at Fox and Bytown. So like especially the My Small Land, it's about Kurdish refugee family, and June 20th is World Refugee Day. So he was like, okay, it's kind of perfect day to show this film. So on June 20th, he's gonna show My Small Land at the Fox and Bytown. And at Bytown, he's also gonna show the Zen Diary. Yeah. So like slowly, you know, like I'm finding movie theaters who would show my films, but I kind of have to work hard to talk to them again and again, because there are so many theaters, and then, you know, sometimes people don't reply, and then and then for Ramayana, I picked up this film because I wanted to distribute animation, because like among any Japanese film contents, anime is the most popular genre and probably the most commercial. But like because MOMO Films is such a startup, it's hard for big anime studios in Japan to like give me their films. So I was like, okay, maybe I just should start with like old films or small films, like animations. And I was talking to my idea with like my friends in Toronto, and she has like a lot of like knowledge in animation, and she sent me this like Twitter link of a trailer of Ramayana, and saying, hey, like this anime, it's kind of like, you know, people like going viral, like this trailer. So I watched the trailer, and the trailer looks really amazing, and I did some research, and I found out like it was like, you know, remastered like into 4K in Japan, and this Japanese company is like doing distribution in Japan, and they have like contact forms. I contacted them, and they replied, and they're like, Canada rights available. So I'm like, okay, I want to, you know, acquire the Canadian rights for this movie. So, and I ended up buying the film. It's because like, one, it's animation, but it's also India-Japan co-production, and I knew that Canada has such a huge Indian community and then also Hindu community. So I thought like it may work if I reach out to those communities. And in fact, like when, you know, JCCC decided to show Ramayana, I contacted like all the like Indian newspapers or like Hindu newspapers in Canada, and then like one guy from Hindu Times replied to me saying, you know, he's really interested in like this film. So Hindu Times and Hindu Forum like collaborated, and like basically like giving like buying maybe around 100 tickets for this screening, and then give away those like acquired 100 tickets to like their community members. So you know, like beside the JCCC's audience, like Hindu Times bought like, you know, 100 tickets for JCCC, and then the James, like the director of JCCC, called me this morning saying there's another like Indian company who is going to buy over 100 tickets.
Oh, that's
so
great.
So it's like amazing. So now it's pretty much sold out, and he kind of have to stop selling the tickets online because he's worried that they may.
You might have to do an additional day of screenings.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my phone. Thank you. I'll just put it in you here.
So I can't really say. And like, when are you going to post this?
For this interview, I'm thinking of posting it if I can, because I have some editing to do, but I'll try to get the editing done. Today's Monday, maybe.
Oh yeah, in a few days, right?
Yeah, I'll have it maybe posted by Wednesday, because I want to post it during the festival.
Okay, because there's another film festival in Canada. It's going to show this film.
Toronto Relation?
I can't tell because they haven't announced yet.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know, and then also the VIF Center is going to show this in the end of June. And then, you know, Rio Cinema in Vancouver. They do a lot of like kind of like genre films and animations. They are like definitely interested in Ramayana. So, and then also like I think through the Indian communities, you know, I can maybe show this film in their cultural center or like Hindu temples. So I think, you know, this could do well. With the support of the community.
Oh no, I think they'll do extremely well, because Indian films, a lot of people, when people think of India, they only think of like Bollywood films, but they have a very strong, I think, animated community, animated film community, because like they have like kids TV shows and that kind of stuff. So like cartoons and animated films are very popular with that community. So I want to ask you about the Zender, because Zender is about food. So for Ramayana, I think it's kind of like, obviously, as you said, you will pitch it to people in the Indian and the Hindu community. For Zender, because it's about food, will you pitch that to, like, for instance, I'm thinking, like, for some reason in my head I was thinking you would like pitch it to like food, not a food, like a food network, or like, you know, to show on their channel, or even like bloggers, like, you know, people who talk about food and are interested in food, like, you know, or like for like magazine, because you want print coverage as well. Would you pitch it to like a magazine that centers on food and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So the Zen Diary, because it's a food-related film, I first pitched to like local food businesses, like Japanese food restaurants and stuff, to get the sponsorship, and so that I can cover the cost for like making flyers and stuff. And then there are like 6 or 7 companies that are very kind enough to, you know, sponsor this film. So like there's like Ramen Raijin, which is like have a restaurant in downtown Toronto. There's like Azuma Foods, which is kind of like a B2B like a food like factory that they make like seafood. They have a seafood factory, but they also started to do B2C sales of like their like packaged food. So mainly like a frozen seafood, but they also have like frozen cheesecake, which is really amazing. And then there's like a Kabuki Sakura, which is like a renovation company. Ozawa Canada Inc., which is also like a Japanese food distributor. There's the Toronto Buddhist Church, which is like a temple in Toronto. And there's Tsuchi Cafe, which is like basically vegan food cafe in Toronto. And Itoei is like a tea company that they can provide some tea bottles for the screening, which is amazing. And at the Zen Diary, they focus on Shojin Ryori, which is Japanese kind of like a temple vegan cooking. So like no animal products. So I was like, I started to reach out to vegan communities on the Facebook, and I posted about the film screenings, and you know, some people liked it. So hopefully like you know, I think this film appealed to like food community as well as like vegan communities, and then also people who like Japanese films or interested in Japanese culture, because it's a lot about like kind of like Japanese culture described in like, you know, super countryside in Japan. And
this film is like very much up my alley. I love watching food. I love watching people prepare food. Like sometimes at night when my brain, like, because Sundays it's hard to shut down my brain, I watch like YouTube channels of like, there's these my sister calls them visual ASMR. So like, you have someone going to a restaurant and they'll follow the chefs from like early morning prep, even going to like the fish markets, and like to prep, and then like to service at the end of the night till they close up. Most of the ones I watch are Japanese restaurants, because I just love sushi. And I love Japanese food. I love the process how they prepare the Japanese food. So I'm like, yes, this is very much me. This is very much up my alley. And like, I just had the idea, like, if you had a special screening at the Tiff Bell like Boss, and then like, because there's a lot of Japanese restaurants in that area on John Street and Queen, you'll be like, at the end you'll be like, okay, we'll have like a special dinner of food prepared by local Japanese restaurants here afterwards. So I was just, the idea just popped in my head. I was like, that's something that I would very much like, dinner and a movie kind of a thing. So I was just like, that would be amazing, and I would definitely be there with chopsticks ready.
Very creative picks of this film.
I'm just like, I just had that idea, like a dinner and a movie special.
Like Japanese food and
I know. And so I want you to talk a bit about the financial side of this, because like, you're talking about buying the films and acquiring that. So how does that work for you financially? Because you're a small independent company. Where does the financial backing come for buying the films and acquiring them? And how that, like, do the distribution companies like, do they fund you? Like, they don't fund you, so like, how are you able to like acquire and buy the films?
So basically, like, I'm kind of self-funding my company. You know, I didn't borrow money from bank or any other film companies, and I just wanted to be kind of completely independent. And I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I don't think financially it's, you know, easy to like make profit out of distributing Japanese films, because like in Canada, like obviously, you know, English speaking films has the most like potential, and like Japanese films like such a niche market, especially like live action films.
Right.
So to me, it's not too much about like making a lot of money or like profit. It's more like I wanted to do what I want to do, and I can learn from the process. And I thought like, okay, even if I don't, make any profit, I can think this experience as me going to school, so I'm paying tuition, and like if I lose money, it's like I paid school, that kind of like mentality. So yeah, and then like I do a lot of like service work in a way. So beside the distribution, sorry, I was working. I was working a lot for the TV production, Pachinko, which was like being shot in Toronto, like season 2. So Pachinko. Yeah, so I was like working for like maybe 3 months, over 3 months, and like that way I kind of make money from distribution. Maybe I don't make that much money, but it's okay. I can survive.
So like you only make back. If you were to make a profit, the profit would come from would come from like theater sales.
Yeah, so theatrical sales, and then that's what I'm doing right now. But maybe like next step will be like I had to talk to TV broadcasters in Canada to see if I can sell the rights to TV broadcasters, then to VOD platforms. But it's only Canada, so Canadian VOD platforms.
Which is kind of hard because we don't have that many. We have Crave,
yeah.
And that's the only one we have.
Yeah, CDC Gem, and Netflix has Canada, but I don't know if they only buy Canadian rights. I'm not sure.
I don't trust Netflix. But that's just me being personal. And I was actually just gonna. My next question was gonna be about streaming because we talked about how the pandemic affected like the production side of film, the film industry. So it also affected the distribution side and also the platforming side because a lot of you had Netflix was cornering the market for a very long time, but then Disney Plus started to go into the market, and then you have Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
But Amazon Prime I think Amazon Prime to me is slightly more artsy in that like they platform a lot of niche international films. Like you can go on there and find like Jamaican films that you can't find on like Netflix, and my sister and I watched like a Jamaican film this is 2022, so like in early 2022. We were like, what? They got Caribbean like productions on like Amazon Prime, and then there's Apple Plus, and the Apple produces and they pay for all the production and stuff. So like for you, like how has and we need to talk about both the pros and the cons as an independent distributor, and like what your thoughts on the the distribution side of digital platformings, because I have my own very very strong feelings about digital platforms, especially like particularly Netflix, in that to me I kind of see them as like hoarding the content in a way, and like how that affects like production for independent filmmakers and the independent cinema in like other countries. Like because when I was in South Korea, I spoke to some producers there, and I spoke to some other people in the film circles there, and they are concerned about how streaming platforms like Netflix and Disney Plus are going to affect their local film industry. Because you got the filmmakers, they're like, okay, like Netflix is almost a sure bet because they basically indiscriminately produce any and everything. Yeah, but that affects the local theater side, because like you don't have these local films being distributed in local theaters and being distributed by local distributors. So like for like Canadian productions, like Pachinko was a Canadian Japanese production, but that was distributed by
American.
Scenes were filmed in Canada, but it was distributed by Apple TV because it was produced by Apple TV. Yeah. So like it doesn't leave room for like a local distributor to say, okay, can I have a chance of distributing this?
I see.
As a local, as an independent thing. So like, what are your thoughts on that? On like the pros and the cons of working within the site of digital platforming?
So I think digital platform would affect movie theaters because the like audience don't go to movie theaters, and then they decide to like stay home and watch films on like VOD platforms. But like my company is kind of too small that it doesn't really it affects me because like I can show my film in like a local movie theaters, and then also if I have a chance I can try and sell the film to those like platforms. I'm not sure if they would pick it up, but like me personally it doesn't really affect my business. In fact, like I'm quite familiar with the platform business because I'm also like selling Japanese content to beauty platforms because I work for like a Japanese distribution company, just doing the sales for North American platform. So I know names and I kind of know how they work. But like those platforms, you know, they have a lot of money and then they acquire content, but also they create content.
Yeah.
So I think they actually create more jobs in wherever like they're making content. So I know like in Japan they have Netflix office, Amazon office, you know, Disney Plus office. They're all like making their own like Japanese original content, which I think is good for the Japanese film industry because, you know, directors get hired, like the crews get hired, maybe with a fair price and a fair working conditions. So it's probably like affecting movie theaters, but overall I think it's creating jobs and just like more market and like more things in the film industry. I think that's my personal opinion.
No, they're definitely creating a lot of jobs, but so this is just me being perfectly honest. So like one of my interests and one of my things that I've been thinking a lot about and that I've been looking into from my perspective as a film critic is, okay, once the films and the dramas even get made, produced and platformed, one of the things that I've noticed is there's very little promotion. So like there's like tons of like Japanese dramas and films on like say for instance on Netflix and even on Amazon Prime, but particularly Netflix, but they don't get promoted, so a lot of people don't watch them. So like only people with like a special interest in like Japanese content even know that these projects even exist. You know, there was one that I watched that I love. It was basically about this lady. She began working with a company. It was an independent company, and they made like customized lingerie for women. And I'm like, this is an amazing show because it's talking about the female body and like the perception of the female body in like society and stuff. And I'm like, and like fancy and it's like fancy lingerie. And I'm just like, and I told some of my friends and the people, what are you talking about? I'm like, this show is right here on Netflix, and like no one even knew it existed. And then there was another one with another actress, a man, and he got pregnant. And it's like this whole thing, and it's talking about the gender, you know, like gender norms and like how men don't understand what women experience through pregnancy and that kind of stuff. I'm like, this is an amazing show on feminism. I'm like, no audience. So
so I think those like, for example, like Japanese language shows are probably promoted and marketed in Japan, but not so much outside of Japan. And then because Netflix has like so many shows, I don't think they have enough like people and like resources to like market every single content equally. But also recently I read an article about, I cannot remember which title, but like definitely American, it could be film or it could be like film made for a platform, but the main actor was saying that the studio spends more marketing fee than the actual film budget. So like I think it was more like they spent twice or three times more marketing fee than than the actual film budget. And then obviously the actor, so it's wrong because like if they have that much budget, they should have spent on the making of the film, not on the marketing. And I'm like, I kind of get that because like I think there's so many contents, and if it's not get marketed, nobody would know about the film, and therefore like they feel like they have to spend a lot of money on marketing. But then like, you know, as a like actor or like director, like, we want more money to make better film.
Yeah.
So I understand. Like,
Yes. So we're talking a bit about dramas now. Since you mentioned that you're looking also to have to moving your distribution to also including digital platforms, what are the odds that you will also be looking into like distributing dramas? I personally have to answer this because I love dramas. I love Asian dramas. So like, have you ever thought about possibly distributing dramas, or is that something that you're gonna get into later on down the road, since your company is just like, she's still a baby?
No, I mean, like, my focus is Japanese content, so it can be like TV series. But like for TV series, I know it's like pretty much impossible to sell Japanese TV series to Canadian broadcasters. And then like, the possibility is maybe like VOD platforms, like someone like Crave may want to pick up interesting Japanese TV series. But like, first I have to make the contact, I had to make connections with Crave. Once I have the connections, and once I sell like few of my contents, and then maybe like they can tell me what kind of stuff they're looking for, so maybe I can acquire rights and then sell. Like, that's like maybe possibility in the future.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool, because that's the other thing that you mentioned, like sometimes it can be difficult with the Canadian TV, and that is very true. I don't think a lot of people outside of Canada, or even people within Canada, understand how like even though Canada is such an extremely large country, Canada doesn't produce as much content as you would think it would do for like local productions. Like, I think like Canada produces, like, especially in Vancouver, because you have like all of the animation studios and the sets there, and even in Toronto, like so much content that's made within Canada isn't for Canadian studios, or productions. Like a lot is for like Hollywood. Yeah, a lot of them it's Hollywood productions. Like when I first moved here, I honestly expected to find way more diverse Canadian stories on screen. Yeah, and then the more I started to watch Canadian, I was like, wait, there's only like apart. Well, I will take back a little bit, because it has sci-fi. Like you had the sci-fi channel, and they made like so much sci-fi shows. Like shows that I used to watch back when in Barbados were produced by the sci-fi channel, and I love like sci-fi films and shows. So, but once that was shuttles. So like now it's like there's only like a few Canadian. There's a few Canadian shows, but they're also very niche. And like they're like, well, a lot of white people, for instance, a lot of the living on ranches and that kind of stuff, and they have very niche audiences. So you have like, what's the one, was it Hudson and Rex? Like that's a very niche audience. So like when I moved, so that's something that still kind of surprises me about the Canadian screen industry, is like it's very I don't know, I think it's very complex and it's very complicated and a little bit puzzling. Because like we had a show called The Porter, which was a black creative team and black cast, and that only lasted one season. Like they didn't renew it, but they renewed a show like Hudson and Rex, and it's like, really, okay, you got a detective dog getting renewed, but but so like for you, what's your perspective on the Canadian industry and like the screen industry, and like you've mentioned the challenges, so talk a bit about how the Canadian screen industry within itself, I think, is very puzzling and curious beast. It's like I think Hollywood is a bit more easier to understand, because Hollywood is very capitalistic and is all that stuff, but you can understand, and it's like so huge. But Canada is just like this thing that I'm still trying to figure out. I'm like, what's happening here?
So I think there's a huge difference between Canadian and American film industry. So like American film industry, I don't think there's any support from the government, because they do well by themselves. Yeah. But like Canadian film industry, it has to be protected, because like we are right beside US, and they who makes like amazing content. So if we don't protect the Canadian content, it's gonna be all American shows, right? Yeah. So Canadian like broadcasters, they have like a quota system. So I think it's something like 90% content has to be Canadian content. Right. So there's very little room for like non-Canadian content on TV broadcasts. That's why I said like it's gonna be pretty much impossible for Japanese shows to get into like maybe small percentage of those space. and then also same as films, like telefilm, heavily funds Canadian films to be made, and support the Canadian film industry, and like educate the crews, which I think is really good. And then not only telefilm, like each provinces have their own program to fund like locally shot stuff, right? So like they invite like TV series and films so that they get shot in their own provinces, and I think that's how like Canada has like a very good crews, and there's like a lot of it, like shows being shot in Canada. Like it can be Canadian content, but it can be American content, whatever. But I think that's good for like people in the industry, like Canadian, in this Canadian film and TV industry.
Yeah, there's a lot of people working within the industry on crews. Like I've been to like a few set visits here. I've been to set visits for like Shazam and a couple other projects, and like others saying like so many projects are made here, and like a lot of, you don't have no clue that they're filming here unless like you see like a whole bunch of white trucks, and that's the production trucks. Like close to where I live, like in the area across the highway from where I live, like there's like 3 or 4 houses that I know that regularly work as film sets, because you're always seeing like the big white production trucks outside and everything. So like Canada, especially I think Ontario in particular, and Toronto, has like a really robust filming industry that provides a lot of work for like film crews, and like those kind of sets. And then of course there's like we mentioned, like Vancouver has like they do the animation, like Marvel films are animated there, as well as Into the Spider-Verse. Like a lot of the creators are Vancouver team. So like Canada has a very robust system. It's just like sometimes you're wondering, like for me, like that's when I first moved there, I'm just like I'm not seeing it on screen. Like sometimes like there's very few shows that would become very mainstream. Like when I first moved here, it was Little House on the not Little House, it was something Prairie. It was a show about like a Muslim family living out in I think it was in the Saskatchewan, I think, something like that. And then like there's very few shows that actually become like very mainstream in like the Canadian conscious. Like of course the most recent example of that would be like Kim's Convenience, where that became internationally known. So that's what I mean, like sometimes with like that's why for me I say like the Canadian screen content becomes to me, it's very unpredictable. Like you can't tell what's going to go internationally mainstream, but a lot of it stays very well known within like the country itself, which is so puzzling for me for such a big country, but I still can't get used to it. Like Canada is so large. Why?
It's true.
So for you, so like you're gonna wrap up now, but like we've talked about like distributing Zendaya and Ramayama. Like what is next for you? Like are you in the process of, I know you probably can't do it. You know what? You probably can't talk about it because of like NDAs and that kind of stuff. Because you mentioned one, and you mentioned a film festival that you can't mention. But what can you say about what's next for you and Momo? I meant to ask, what like the name Momo Films? Where did the Momo come from?
So when I was thinking about the film company name, this lawyer gave me advice that I do not use English names because you can be sued if there's like another company
with the same name.
With the same name, a similar name. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so scary. And then he was like suggesting, because you're Japanese, maybe you should have some kind of Japanese name. Okay, that's a good advice. And I came up with Momo because Momoko was my mom's name, but also Momo means like the fruit peaches, and a peach in like Japan and other Asian countries usually have a kind of like a good luck fruit. So get rid of evil, or you eat peaches, you eat it for like many years. So it's kind of has like a kind of good meaning in general, and then also like very easy to remember, right? So I was like, okay, I'll go with Momo.
That makes sense.
So
what's next for Momo Films?
So I am invited to Fantasia because I became a jury of their like animation department. So I'm gonna be visiting Fantasia for the first time actually. That's exciting. And with the Toronto Japanese Film Festival, that moved to Hibiya in Tokyo as like a outdoor film festival.
Right.
So it's called Toronto Japanese Film Festival in Hibiya.
Oh, okay.
And then, it's been like 4 or 5 years. I'm pretty sure that's gonna happen this year. So like I'll probably be in Japan in October when that happens. And in terms of like distribution, cause like I'm basically doing everything by myself. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I want to focus on what I have right now.
Yeah.
So I don't really think I want to acquire another film within this year. I may if I come across with something really amazing, but like, distributing one film is like a lot of work for me. So,
it is. So for what you've been saying, like it's way more labor intensive, especially as it's just you. You don't have like a whole team behind you, so it's way more labor intensive for you.
Yeah.
And I like you're saying that you have to be a bit more selective because I think it also you have to have passion for the film that you're distributing.
Exactly.
This is when you have to really be like, I really believe in this film. I really want.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. And like after studying the MOMO Films, I got interviewed by like few Japanese medias in Canada, and like people who read the article like reach out to me saying, hey, like is there anything that I can help? Like those are sometimes like film students or like people who used to work for film industry in Japan, and like they're like really kindly like volunteering a time for like just to post something on social media and stuff.
Yeah.
So MOMO Films social media is like mainly handled by like those people who are like helping me, but beside that, like I'm doing acquisition, I'm doing like sales to the theaters, I'm doing sales to like broadcasters and platforms. So it's just like a lot of work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you good luck, and like
Thank
you
you.
said, that you named the company Momo. I think that was actually very a good thing because my mom believes in speaking things into being. So like if you name the company something that has a good positive and connotations to it, so I'm sure you'll do extremely well.
Thank you so much.
And I might be able to see you at Fantasia because I usually cover it virtually, but I want to, like this year, one of my goals for this year is to cover more film festivals in person this year, so
Nice.
I might be able to see you at Fantasia Festival.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much for
Thank you so much.
Yay. And I think that's it. And I'll stop it there.